Everyone, good morning. You have reached the Human K channel. Cognitive dissonance theory is an interesting area of psychology that we're going to learn more about today. Leon Festinger came up with this theory in 1957. It tells us a lot about how a person's drive, perceptions, and thoughts are connected. The idea of cognitive dissonance says that people have a natural need to be consistent with themselves. When our thoughts, such as our knowledge, opinions, views, or actions, don't match up with each other, this is called cognitive dissonance. Because of this, we want to do something to lessen or get rid of this dissonance. The theory says that when two ideas are important and agree with each other, they create a state of consonance, which is a good and peaceful state. On the other hand, when two ideas conflict, it causes confusion and discomfort in the mind. Festinger's work changed the way psychologists study by looking at how rewards affect attitudes and actions and how actions and reasons affect how people think and feel. Dissonance can come from many different places, like when logic doesn't make sense, when cultures are different, when views disagree, or when people have had different experiences. The level of dissonance depends on how many and how important the different ideas are. Festinger said that the total strain of a dissonance is the ratio of inconsistent to consistent thoughts, with each thought being given a weight based on how important it is. People can deal with conflict in 4 different ways. The first is changing thoughts that don't fit with other beliefs or attitudes. This means changing either action or knowledge to fit with other thoughts or attitudes. The second approach is to make conflicting things less important. This is usually done by devaluing or downplaying their importance. Another way is to add new elements that work well with what you already know. This means looking for or adopting views or actions that are in line with what you already know. Lastly, people can make current, consistent elements more important by pointing out their value or relevance. Festinger gave a good example to show how these tactics work. Let's look at the case of a person who smokes all the time. To get rid of conflict, the smoker could change what they do or what they know. For example, they could stop smoking or learn more about how smoking is bad for them. Or, they could make the dissonant thought less important by telling themselves that smoking is not as bad as they thought. Now, we're going to talk about ways to reduce confusion. The first approach, which has been studied the most, is to change people's minds. It means changing the way you feel to get a sense of harmony. People think that attitudes are more flexible than other parts of the brain, which makes them easier to change. Many researchers have used the emotional states of participants before and after certain events or situations to measure dissonance. But it's important to know that depending only on changes in attitudes limits our understanding of how people deal with dissonance. Scholars have said that we need to look into other methods, like getting distracted or forgetting. A good way to deal with conflict has been found to be to draw attention away from it and let it fade into the background. People also feel less psychological discomfort when they downplay the value of dissonant thoughts or reaffirm their sense of self. Another tactic worth looking into is denying that you are to blame. When people feel like they are responsible for what they know, confusion can happen. But denying responsibility, especially when it comes with feelings of shame or guilt, can help lessen dissonance. On the other hand, people often try to match their actions with what they think by adding congruent thoughts to their belief system, looking for external reasons, or rationalizing their actions. Even though changing behavior is one way to get rid of dissonance, it may not always be the best or most convenient choice. Some habits are hard to change because of things like addiction or the fact that they can't be changed. Still, studies have shown that dissonance arousal can lead to good changes in behavior, though not much research has been done on how it works with other ways to reduce stress. As a way to change behavior, act justification is when you do something new that fits in with something you already did. For example, people who agree to stop smoking for a short time may find it easier to stretch the time they don't smoke, which makes the first period seem less difficult. It's important to remember that these strategies can be used at the same time, with a chance of change depending on how resistant the person is and how important the thoughts are. But reducing dissonance doesn't always work, especially if there isn't enough social support, harmony, or satisfaction with the already problematic part. Now, let's take a quick look at the experimental paradigms that have been used to test cognitive dissonance theory and provide support for it. Decision justification looks at dissonance in making decisions, while effort justification looks at dissonance that comes from putting a lot of work into something that doesn't turn out well. Lastly, induced compliance behavior is the study of how people deal with conflict when they do things that go against what they say they want to do. Researchers have learned more about how people manage the social world by putting together different kinds of cognitive processes and studying the psychological processes behind dissonance. Even though there has been a lot of progress, there is still a lot to learn about how effective different methods are and how they work together. Now, we'll look at how it can be used in different areas. The idea of cognitive dissonance can be broken up into 4 parts that each explain a different part of the process. The first step is the cognitive discrepancy, which looks at conflicts between cognitive elements, the emergence of dissonance, and later motivation. In the dissonance phase, the cognitive conflict makes you feel uncomfortable on a mental level. This discomfort is what drives people to do something to get rid of the conflict. In the dissonance reduction step, you look at the ways that dissonance is reduced. This phase tries to figure out how people deal with their different ideas and get back to a state of cognitive unity. Cognitive dissonance theory has been used a lot to understand what happens after a buy. Researchers have looked at different points of contact after a purchase, such as the customer's evaluation, happiness, desire to buy again, and even the rate at which customers change their minds. Cognitive dissonance theory has been used in group studies as well as in individual situations. It has been used to look at things like emotional labor, team dissonance, searching for knowledge, and employees changing jobs. Even though many studies look at parts of the process rather than the whole, the motivation step hasn't gotten as much attention. Cognitive dissonance theory gives a simple explanation for complex dissonance processes, but there are worries about ignoring confusing variables and the effect of psychological and cultural factors on dissonance. 3 changes have been suggested to fix these problems: the self-consistency model, the self-affirmation model, and the aversive effects model. These changes are meant to give different reasons for conflict and deal with the paradox of simplicity. We looked at the basic ideas of cognitive dissonance theory and how it can be used in different areas. As you keep learning, I encourage you to dig deeper into the study and think about these changes, which offer different ways to look at dissonance. The talk for today is over. Thank you for paying attention, and I hope you'll learn more about this interesting subject. Have a great day.